How about some questions? Any questions? None? None more questions? Oh, I'm sure there's one out there. Yeah.
Does it have to be related to cloud?
It'd be anything.
When did you first start using Vim?
I know I was using it by 1991. I don't know if I was using it before then. But then it was just VI. Vim didn't exist then.
Did you participate in the VI Emacs Flame Wars?
Oh yeah, I mean you got to keep the dirt bags in their place. Yeah, there's a lot of nice stuff with Vim that didn't exist in VI. No doubt about that. And I'll give you one of them right now. Just because I'm a giver. Let's see. All right, so all this existed in VI. Let me start with what existed in VI. I have a task here where I need to, let's say I need to change each line so that the first element becomes the last element. So here, for example, I've copied and pasted this. So I would need to do something like that. All right, remove root colon and then end with colon root. So if I'm careful on how I figure that out, what I want to do is, so I'll keep my little documentation up here. I want to delete word. I just delete the lines again. All right. I want to delete word. And then I'll do a $sign to get to the end of the line. And then I will do an A colon escape P. So now I'm going to do A colon, and then I can actually embed an escape in here by doing a Control V and hitting escape. And then P for put. So that puts me, where does that put me? Let me see. So I did A colon escape P, so that puts me there. And then I can hit 0 to get to the beginning of the line. X, 0x. And then I want to be able to repeat this, so then I want to do a J to go to the next one. Okay. So this in VI, like Vim, has named buffers. So for those of you who use Vim, you know that YY or 5YY, something like that, is going to yank. And the reason that terms yank and put are used is because this precedes GUIs, right? VI precedes GUIs, and so there's no such thing as copy and paste. So the terminology that was invented was yank and put. That goes into an unnamed buffer. There are 26, there are actually 36 named buffers that corresponding to the letters of the alphabet and the digits. And when you rather than doing YY, I can say something like double quote A YY, and that would throw that line into A, or that would throw 5 lines into Q. And then in order to place it somewhere later, I can do colon Q P, and then that would go ahead and put the contents of that buffer. And one of the nice things about these named buffers, unlike the unnamed buffers, they persist beyond editing sessions. So you see that in 111, I'm always bringing up code, and then I do what I type is quote CP, which is to put out whatever's in my C buffer, and I use C as a mnemonic for code, and that gives me a little shell program to go ahead and demonstrate the latest in if statement technology to the 111 students. Anyway, so what you can do in VI then is you can take all of these keystrokes that I figured out, and I can put them in a named buffer. So I will say, what I'm going to do is I'll say quote, I'll choose a letter R, and I'll do an uppercase D. Uppercase D deletes from your current line, or from your current character to the end of the line. I want to do that because I want to avoid something like YY, because what YY captures as well is the new line on the end, and I don't want the new line. I literally just want the characters I'd normally type. So I'll type double quote R, uppercase D, and that deletes them. Okay, now you can type an @ symbol in a named buffer, and it will execute the keys. It will execute that buffer as if they're keystrokes being typed in. So I can say @R, @R, @R. I can say 5 @R and 10 @R, and I can go ahead and quickly do some complex edit that I have to repeat. All that existed in VI. What Vim does to really up the game is, yeah, let's do that. Whoops. All right. Have you ever accidentally seen that on the bottom of your screen and not known what it is? Recording. Okay. What it is that's literally recording your keystrokes into a named buffer. And so in Vim, what you can do is type a Q and then a letter. So in this case, I'd type QR. So I say QR. Now all my keystrokes are going to go into named buffer R. So I can say DW $A: escape put 0xj. And now when I hit Q again, it stops the recording. So now I can go ahead and say 10 @R. And you see that Vim has really upped the game, and that I can go ahead and do the edit as I would do it, rather than me having to divine out all the keystrokes and do them separately. Vim nicely captures them all, throws them in the named buffer for me to do my repeated edit. So Emacs sucks. All right. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I don't really have much to talk about that's going to certainly keep up the pace here the entire class. So let me see. We're not in that class. Do we have to get to higher ground? No, it's like Stan has a birthday today in the Department of Emergency Affairs. Right? All right, you can return to your seats. So for the I guess the one thing I want to talk a little bit about are shared pointers, since I haven't talked about that at all. I'd certainly encourage you to seek out a tutorial on them, but I'll give you the quick skinny on them. So I've taken this date class that I use as fodder for other discussions, including this one now. Although I did modify it before class just a few minutes ago. This had the good old-fashioned void display function, and I replaced it with our good friend, the insertion operator. So you have a working example of that. And this is just doesn't do much. It has a month, day, and year, has a constructor, a destructor, the operator to print it out. And if I look at the source to that, then The constructor has an initialization list where I initialize the month, day, and year. I have a courtesy message to let us know we're in there. Same with the destructor, let us know that we're destructing. And then the insertion operator, which will print out the month, day, and year separated by slashes, and of course OS is returned. Now my sample program here, all I do is create a date, not much interesting there, but I can then do things like this. Okay, key thing to note, so this is a principle to remember. It doesn't quite translate to our compiler's project simply because the information being output generally, well, that's not true. I guess a symbol does go on one line. So this would work for the symbols. I was thinking more in terms of like the symbol table where you're printing out multiple lines. But this will work, this is equally valid for symbol, and that is that there is no end line here. And the reason is to give it behavioral similarity to built-in types, right? So if I say int x and then I say cout x, there is no end line. If you want to end line, you as the user of the output, as the generator of the output statement, have to put it in there manually. And so that's exhibited right here. Let's see, let me come over here. And let me change the, give me a little more real estate horizontally here. G++ standard equals C++17. This is main.cpp and date.cpp. Okay, not terribly exciting. I guess I can run it through Valgrind just for giggles. I guess I should have compiled. Generally, compiling with the debugging symbols is going to give you line numbers when it complains about files. Otherwise, it can only give you the file name and not the line number. Valgrind a.out, and we should not see much. No leaks are possible. So that's what we're looking for. And then kind of repeat what I did last time. We can go ahead and say my date pointer is equal to a new date, and I have no release there, so I should have my, whoops, that becomes dp. What change do I have to make to line 11 to make that fly? Actually, let me leave line 11. Make the error self-evident. Oops, I forgot to write the change. Did I forget to write it? Right, and the problem is all I'm doing is I'm outputting the address, the pointer address, so yes, be sure you dereference those pointers. You'll have to do a lot of that. And there we get, everything looks good until you run it with Valgrind. And then Valgrind is going to complain about definitely lost. And you take its advice to rerun with leak check full. And that'll add some additional information saying that it was the operator new on line 10 of main.cpp. So that lets you know the memory that had been allocated that was never released. Of course, to release it, we say delete dp. Let's compile again. Run Valgrind. Let me clear the screen. Run Valgrind again. And no leaks. All right. What if we're allocating an array? Oh, shoot. Yeah, I've got constructor issues if I do that, so we want to get into that discussion. Oh, never mind. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it this way. We'll say float, or there aren't floats in GPL, so let me adhere to those conventions. Double pointer equals new double 20. And then you have to be sure and put those square braces there. If you're curious as to why you have to do that, take my 511 class. Huh? All right, there we go. So we allocate 20, release them as an array. Oh, come on. Double pointer. Val grind. And it should say no leaks are possible, so everything's good. All right. So the issue is that having to manually manage memory, we kind of want to minimize that given its history of being an issue. Memory leaks are just one of the Memory leaks are one of the main issues in applications programming in C++ or C++. So in order to take the onus off us to manage memory, we take advantage of shared pointers in order to let the compiler, essentially, with its built-in types here, take care of it for us. So instead of this here, I would comment this out, and I would say that I have to include memory. And shared pointer, it is of type date. I'll still call it DP. Okay. So rather than using the new statement directly, we go ahead and use this make shared, and that will dynamically create under the hood. It is dynamically allocating memory for a date, and it's running the 3-argument constructor for date. And then it gets assigned to DP, and we can use DP the way we've been using it, such as dereferencing it here. Let's give it a go. Let's run it. And I haven't run it through Valgrind, but Valgrind is going to say everything's fine. You will note that even though I no longer have to specifically delete it. So when DP goes out of scope, the destructor runs. And the definition of it, there are other types of pointers. There's like a unique pointer, which, as it implies, only this variable is the only one that's going to be referring to that memory. I wanted you to use shared pointers with the symbols because we're throwing those around, and you're going to, at multiple points, you're basically going to have different bits of code sharing the same pointer to whatever chunk of dynamic memory you have allocated for a particular symbol. So all that happens with under the hood with the shared pointers, it's keeping a little reference count of how many different pointers are pointing to it, and once that reference count falls to 0, then it automatically releases that memory for you. Okay, it really makes things nice and easy. so that you don't have to keep track of all that stuff anymore. So that's basically it. You can go ahead and create a vector. In fact, actually, let me up the game even a little bit more. I'm going to take out the readability spacing here just to compress it all a little bit. So auto is a keyword that existed in the C language. It still does. And the reason for auto is to distinguish static or global variables from what are referred to as automatic variables. And an automatic variable is simply I know I'm not in it, and this is just code I'm throwing out here. And no, it's not in any function. Right, so if I create that float, the idea is that it's automatically created with each iteration of that loop. And so that's where the word automatic is coming from. In the C language, what you could do is you could be very specific and say that this is an automatic variable. Guess how much the word auto is used? Basically not at all, because why the hell are you going to waste 5 keystrokes when you can just do that? Right? It was a completely useless keyword. So it ended up getting repurposed in C++ with the more recent standards, which is that in a lot of cases the compiler can define the expected type. And if it's able to define the expected type, you can just say auto and let the compiler figure it out, and then you don't need to figure it out yourself. It's actually attractive because things can, when you start working with templates, things get messy with all these angle braces, and you have angle braces inside of angle braces, and you end up with these nasty representations, and it's great to just, who cares about it, and you just put the word auto there, let the compiler figure it out, and you just use it, right? Did I ever use the same variable name? Yes. This would be dp2. And there we go. We should get 2 constructors, 2 destructors for the 2 variables I created. So definitely feel free to flex your C++ muscles and use auto to simplify your code. What were we doing? Oh yeah, vectors. So I guess I'll just, let me leave all that there. Let me create a vector of shared pointers to dates. I'll call this my sharevec, and that's incomplete. Sharevec dot pushback. I can do something like make shared date blow in there. And note that we only have 3 constructors and 3 destructors. So there is, this one is constructing, dp2 is constructing, and then this is the third one that's constructing. dp is just a smart pointer being pushed back, so that's basically increasing a reference count for this particular object to 2, and then everything's going to fall out of scope at the end of main, and so the destructors get called for those. Okay? That's about all I had regarding that. Again, it's definitely worth. Here's the deal, and I think I alluded to it before, is I'm just trying to step up your game a little bit because this is coding C++ nowadays, where you definitely need to know the pointers and all the headaches applied with that. But for general applications programming, if you're not that close to the metal, then you're going to be using shared pointers and unique pointers and stuff like that. So to the extent that you might end up with a job using C++, then that helps you out. If you're not using C++, then well, we won't talk about that, 'cause you'll all be using C++, right, for your next web application. All right. Any questions? All right, so this is what I need you to do. I haven't put a specific due date on this. I think I originally said I was kind of thinking, when did I say? Late next week, did I say? Let me see what this thing says. March 4th. What the hell's that? That's Monday. Yeah, no, it's not due Monday. Let me push it back to, let's say, like there, Friday night, Saturday night. Sunday night, all right. Some random Sunday in April. That's right. So this will be due on final exams. Oh, I did say 4. Wait a minute. Drinking my own Kool-Aid. Let's see, did I cut my sanity easy? You all are using your mind waves on me. Yes.
Wait, you said it's due on the 10th and then visible until the 11th.
Yeah, I do that. So the story behind that is the reason for that. It's just a practical reason. Is so the technique I use is this assignment. This link here disappears, right? So that you can't turn anything in late. Otherwise, it would persist forever. And so what happens is if I make it due at 11 o'clock and it disappears at 11:01, then I get half a dozen emails from the network went down to my computer was slow to the dog ate my keyboard, whatever. And so the easiest thing to do is to say, okay, I'll give you an extra 8 hours or 9 hours to turn it in, so I don't have to worry about those excuses. That's it. Now what it'll do is when you submit it in that window, it'll put a big word there saying you're turning this in late, and I don't look at any of that. I just grab the last submission, right? So if you ever see that I'm submitting it late, then just ignore it. For me anyway, I can't speak to other instructors. So that's what that's in all my classes. So if you've been totally panicked when you're like within 3 minutes of the deadline, you're worrying for nothing. Other questions? All right, so I went over this. We got it pushed out. We've got all next week to work on this. I definitely am enthusiastic about answering your questions. I am sitting in front of my computer a lot, and if something comes into Piazza, I'm pretty on the spot about getting them answered. There are times on weekends when I'm away from my computer, so don't blow me off this weekend and all next week. Get to work on this on Friday and then hope that I'm going to be timely, because it's many of you are going to have questions, and it's far better for you to do a little bit of pain this weekend and come with questions rather than expecting me to be completely available. Again, I like to be completely available. I'm just being honest. On weekends, I'm not as available as I'd like to be for you. So please try not to wait to the last minute on this one. So guess that's about it. I don't have anything else to say. I will stop the recording. If you have anything individually you want me to look at, I'll be sitting here and be happy to do that. Otherwise, I would encourage you to hang out here and even sit with someone else and kind of start noodling over this. If you walk out right now, I won't be offended. You're certainly within rights to do that. So with that, here endeth the recording.